It's always a good advantage being the first speaker in the morning. I get to take up someone else's time, and I get to throw the entire schedule off whack for the rest of the day. But I won't do that today because I understand the importance of sticking to timelines. First, I want to just thank you all for inviting me here today to be part of this summit. This is very impressive. I wasn't sure what to expect. I got invited, Minister invited me to come and speak, and thank you for, where is he? Oh, there he is. Thank you very much for the invitation, sir, to come and speak today. And honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect, so I came thinking, it's okay, great, thank you, fantastic. I came thinking that I may speak to maybe 100 people, and driving over, I asked the gentleman who accompanied me this morning, I said, well, how many folks were there? He said, we have about a couple hundred. But I didn't think a couple hundred looked like this, right? This is more than just a couple hundred people. So I think this is a fantastic thing. I want to spend a few minutes, though, talking about taxation, incentives, and looking at some other areas that I want to touch on briefly this morning. So I think it is safe for me to say that Grand Bahama is fastly or rapidly developing as the technology capital for the country. You also clap on that one, this Grand Bahama, right? But if we're going to move technology forward, if we're going to advance the whole concept of ICT in the country, information technology, communications, etc., science, technology, and innovation, and some other areas to be looking at, then there's some things that must be put in place to make that a reality. It cannot happen by simple happenstance or wishful thinking. There has to be some serious collaboration, private-public partnerships, and dialogue to ensure that the outcomes that we're seeking to achieve are actually first of all, that they are achievable, that they're implementable, right? And that we can measure the results of what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So you see on the screen, I'm going to flip through a few slides back and forth, and I'm glad I'm able to control this so I can just bring you back to where I want you to be for a few moments. But the first slide I want to talk about, and you asked me maybe what does stuff to do with taxation and incentives and the rest of it. And I tell this story often. Is that me? I don't think that's me, but if it is, okay. So I tell the story often. I was in Panama a few years ago, attending a meeting over there, which was the America's Business Dialogue, right? It's a gathering of regional leaders in the private sector and also government officials to talk about advances in the Caribbean and Latin America as it relates to private sector and public sector engagement. When I was there the last time, I've been there a few times to attend these kinds of meetings. When I was there for that particular meeting, there were a lot of what we call high net worth individuals who were present at that time. And they had people who attended those meetings. Barack Obama was there, the President of the United States. He came, he spoke. Carlos Slim, who at the time was the world's richest man, he was there. Mark Zuckerberg, you know him from Facebook, he was there. So I had the occasion at the time to speak with a number of Latin business persons. And I had a few questions for them because I was interested in finding out why was it that we weren't seeing more of the Latin businesses establishing presence in the Bahamas, whatever the industry is. And they gave me several reasons why they could not or did not consider investing in the Bahamas. And one of those reasons that they expressed to me was this: energy. That the cost of energy in the Bahamas was prohibitive to the degree that they could not establish a presence in the country because what they would have paid for energy consumption would have chewed up a lot of their reserves and cash, and they could not justify in their minds how they can set up a presence in the Bahamas and pay the kind of rates we pay in this country for energy. Not only paying the rates we pay for energy, but also dealing with the efficiency of it and the reliability of it. I don't know if you all have the same problem in Freeport that we have in Nassau, but you can set your clock by the time the power goes out. right? Y'all have the problem here? All right, well, let me lament my problem to you. Because where I come from, it's a problem, right? You're in the middle of the night doing something constructive, and boom, the light goes out, and no decency to call and say, we can turn your light off in 5 minutes, right? And then the bigger problem is you miss it, not pay your bill for a couple of days, and they can turn you off again because you don't pay the bill that ran up so high because you can't afford to pay the bill because the cost of electricity is just too high. So for that sake, then I envy you in Freeport, right? In Nassau, it's a big problem. So we talked about this, and one of the things that we came up with in the private sector side, from the Chamber of Commerce and also from some of the national committees that we work with, was that we have to fix our energy issues in the country generally. Now, Freeport is an exception. Outside of Freeport, the rest of us in the Bahamas are suffering when it comes to energy. And it's something that needs to be fixed and corrected very, very quickly. And we've recommended some plans to the government, and I know that they're looking at a few things and how we can get that corrected. But as far as we're concerned, if we can fix this issue in the country, we believe we can attract more businesses to come in to consider how they're going to set up shop in this country to do business, because now they're able to properly manage the cost of energy in the country. So I want to flip through all that. The next thing I want to talk about is this, tax reform. Now, when we talk about tax reform, find that there. When we talk about tax reform, I'm not talking about necessarily, we heard the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, say something about that he may have a look at corporate tax or income tax. And he's not here, so I can talk about him. And I whispered to him, said, you can look, but please don't touch, right? I'm not sure if now is the time to talk about, correcting or implementing any new taxes. But certainly, for us to be able to attract the kind of attention we want to this country, positive attention, and for us to attract the kind of investments that we want to see coming to this country, and in particular coming into Grand Bahama as well, is that we've got to look at our tax infrastructure. What's happening with our taxation systems in the country today that will cause either cause persons or businesses to come in to want to set up shop in the country, or the adverse side of it is to cause them to want to stay away. Again, because the taxation system is something that may need an additional overhaul. Now, we know that we introduced in 2015 value-added tax. VAT came in, we talked about it, was started at 15%, we settled at 7.5%. We were able to reduce significantly the number of exemptions that were being considered at the time. The system, even though there was some growing pains and there was a considerable amount of resistance to its implementation, we're satisfied that ultimately, based on the efficiency of it, that it's working efficiently, right, to the degree that the government is able to collect the taxes that is owed to it. And I believe that a lot of that efficiency is based on the fact that the private sector is directly involved in collecting the taxes on behalf of the government. But when we look at the issue of taxation in the country, we've got to consider what is it that we're doing now that is beneficial to businesses in the country. If you are a foreign direct investor and you're considering coming into the Bahamas to do business, there are several things that these people are looking for to determine whether they want to come into this jurisdiction to conduct business. But the thing is this, we are not living in an age of isolation. The Bahamas is not the only country in the Caribbean. We're certainly not the only country in the Caribbean that offers sun, sand, and sea. We're not the only country in the Caribbean who's offering technology innovation. We're not the only country in the Caribbean or Latin America, for that matter, who are boasting that we have a burgeoning economy or industry, where people can come in and they can begin to develop industries, etc. As a matter of fact, there are other countries in this region who are much smaller than we are, but they have done a lot more than we have done to date. Particularly in our innovation sector. We talk about science, technology, innovation, communications, etc., telecoms, and the rest of it. Countries like the Cayman Islands, for example, I had the president of the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce down to us several weeks ago. And we asked him to give a presentation on what's been happening in the Caymans. Why is it that the Cayman Islands, as small as they are, smaller than the population of New Providence, for example, and certainly the land masses is as small or smaller. What is it that you guys are doing over there that causes you to be leapfrogging on these issues as it relates to ease of doing business, technology, and just getting people to come in, attracting foreign direct investors into a little country? Well, the answer was pretty simple. When I look at it, for example, this way. Anyone knows what the GDP of the Bahamas is to date? Can anybody tell me? Just shoot it out, just call it out. How much? How much? Give me a percentage. What is the percentage of GDP in the country today? Well, let me ask you this way. What is the percent of debt to GDP? All right, 75, 65. All right, let's just settle at 70%. Our debt to GDP in the Bahamas is around 70%. 70. Do you know what the debt to GDP is in the Cayman Islands? Can anybody guess? It's at 40%. The debt to GDP in the Cayman Islands is 17%. 17. They are smaller than we are. They've got fewer people than we've got. But they're doing things to attract the kind of attention that they need to attract to get their economies flowing and get their juices flowing, so to speak. So while we are here in the Bahamas having a lot of these wonderful conversations about how we want to move our country, how we want to grow our economies, how we want to grow industries, the Cayman Islands are standing out in front of the world with a flag saying, here we are, come do business with us, we're ready to do business with you. And it's working. It is working because large companies are going to the Cayman Islands in droves, setting up establishments in the Cayman Islands, and not just financial services firms. Cayman Islands, as you know, is popular for captive insurance industries, financial services companies, other insurance type services. But now the Cayman Islands are promoting themselves as a technology hub. The Cayman Islands do not have the kind of technology infrastructure that we've got in the Bahamas. They don't have the same kind of footprint that we've got. When you talk about having fiber connectivity running in the ground, we'll talk more about that in a second. They still have their internet facilities are slower than ours. Right? It is not as reliable as our internet services are here in the country. But they are saying to the world that we have fantastic technology. We can get you online quickly. We can set up your companies to do business in this country within a matter of days, not months. And the people in the world who pay attention to the kind of thing are going there to get business done. You see the same thing happening in Bermuda. Nike, who's probably one of the world's most recognized brands, operates some of their headquarters out of Bermuda, but they don't have a presence there. They don't have, there's no big factory in Bermuda, right? You're not going to find a big 5,000 staff complement sitting in Bermuda, but Nike is registered in Bermuda. Because Bermuda is promoting themselves as that kind of a country that attracts that kind of a business. Now, adversely in the Bahamas, we've had, particularly in the financial services sector, we've seen a flight of companies leaving the country because they're finding that doing business in this country has become onerous. We talk about the ease of doing business, and we have been talking about the ease of doing business for a long time. But every time we talk about the ease of doing business, we drop on the index of doing business in the World Economic Forum. I'm very pleased and we're happy to see that, at least in the last report that they put out a week and a half ago, that we moved up 2 steps. So we are no longer 121, we're back to 119, which is where we were prior to the fall 2 steps that they had a couple of reports ago. But if we want to attract businesses coming into this country, then there are some things that we're going to have to do. Some of it may be a bit painful, some of it may be a bit surgical, but it is all necessary. We cannot live in isolation. if we are going to be attracting multi-billion-dollar corporations, they're going to come with their demands. They're coming with their wish list of things that they would like to see. If I'm bringing my capital into your country, into Grand Bahama, into Freeport, and I'm saying to you, I'm prepared to spend X billions of dollars, then if I were that investor, I would expect you to roll out a certain kind of a red carpet for me. The problem with that, though, for Bahamians, is that we have become, when I say we, because I'm talking to all of us, we have become so myopic in our view of foreign direct investors. We have essentially, in our minds, shut them out. We have said to ourselves over many decades, generations perhaps, that the Bahamas is for Bahamians, which is true. But Bahamians did not build this country by themselves. Bahamians didn't have the level of capital to build this country with the resources that we had available to us. Now, I'm not saying that we didn't do anything. I'm saying that we couldn't do it by ourselves. And the fact is that if we are going to be attracting investors into the country, then there are some things we've got to consider doing. And I'm going to try and get to my immigration reform slide in a second. But we have to be open to attracting businesses to come in, attracting investors to come into the country. But when they come, what is it that we're prepared to give up or concede or to offer in concessions or incentives to allow these companies to come in, spend their money, build structures, put infrastructure in the ground for us, hire a lot of people, train people in the process of doing so, promote people up to high levels of executive management in these companies, offer partnerships, equity partnerships in these arrangements, because it is my view, only my view, that when we invite and attract foreign direct investors into the country, especially in certain industries, I would like to see those kinds of arrangements where a partnership is extended, an opportunity is extended to Bahamian businesses to partner with foreign entities so that we can ensure that we don't have a rate of corporate attrition, where when large companies leave the jurisdiction, all the intellectual property goes with them, and there's no one left in place to grow that industry or to grow that company. And that if we have people in place in partnerships with these foreign direct investors, at least we know that there's some level of naval string that's left in the ground for us to be able to take into consideration. You all still with me? All right. So, on the issue of ICT then, information technology, ICT. Today in the country, we boast in the Bahamas of having a twin pillar of the economy. Accounts for nearly 50% of the GDP of the country. Most of the persons who are employed in the country are employed in the tourism-related field, right, or allied services. The rest of them were employed in the financial services industry, and financial services being very broad scope, banks, insurance companies, brokerage facilities, offshore facilities, capital markets type facilities. So financial services was very and is very broadly defined. But it's my view that we now need to consider establishing the third leg on this stool. And my view is that the third leg on the stool has to be in the area of ICT. It has to be in the area of developing our telecommunications systems, our technology infrastructure, information systems, looking at our innovation systems, and just generally looking at this, what we call STEM, science, engineering, math, technology, or what we now even narrow down further to STIs, science, technology, and innovation. And for us to be able to grow this industry, then the last part of that, the I, the innovation, has to be something that we must take very, very seriously, because without innovation, then there's no creativity in finding ways to grow the sector. Today we have in the country 2 major players in the ICT space. And I say major players meaning, well, 3 essentially, meaning these are the big boys, right? You've got the BTC on the one hand, you've got Cable Bahamas, you've got now Alive. I see my friend Damien sitting in the audience. So these 3 giants of the industry are there, and they're doing what they need to do to support their customers, right? BTC's been around for a very long time. Cable Bahamas has been around for the last 20-odd years or so. Alive, the new kid on the block, but they're growing very rapidly. But there are also quite a number of smaller companies in the country. We call them ISPs, Internet Service Providers, who are providing services on a much smaller scale to smaller clientele, whether it's dealing with you directly as an individual or dealing with their corporate clients, etc. The infrastructure in the country, Grand Bahama, as far as I am aware, and looking at the research that I've done, Grand Bahama, Freeport in particular, has perhaps the best technology footprint you can find anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. Right? Meaning that the world can look at the infrastructure that is in Freeport, and they can mirror that and place that in other parts of the world, in the Caribbean and Latin America in particular, and they can make themselves a ton of money doing it. The challenge that I have, not only with Freeport, with Nassau, which are the 2 main islands where this infrastructure is in place, is I don't think we are capitalizing on this enough. I don't think we're promoting enough that we have this level of technology infrastructure in the country today. Like I said, the Cayman Islands are out front of the world waving a flag, saying that we are here, come and do business with us. We are the Cayman Islands, we've got infrastructure in place. It's a wonderful infrastructure, blah, 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 we're doing well. But what are we doing in the Bahamas to raise that same level of awareness? Does the world know that Freeport has some of the best infrastructure that they can find anywhere in the Western Hemisphere? I don't think the world knows that. Does the world know that many of the islands in the country are already connected via fiber optic connectivity and that it's expanding as we speak? I don't think the world is quite aware of that. So maybe the time has come for us as a country and for Freeport to lead the way, to step in front of the Caymans, wave a bigger flag, and say, we are here now, come and do business with us. Because if you do not do it, one of the things we found when we looked at the ease of doing business in the country, and there's a national committee that's been established, the chamber has a committee within the chamber that's looking at ease of doing business as well. One of the things that we figured out when it comes to the movements on that index, it wasn't so much, and this was a bit of a controversial opinion, but it wasn't so much that the Bahamas was declining necessarily, right? It wasn't that we were doing things that kept putting us further and further and further down on this list. Because at one point, we were up in the top 50 percentile. We were actually at the top of the food chain when it came to the ease of doing business. Now, out of the countries that have been assessed, we are at the bottom of the pile, literally. So we determined that it wasn't necessarily because the Bahamas was doing things so poorly, but it's because one of the biggest problems that we found in the Bahamas is this. Not that we are doing things poorly. One of our challenges is that we are too complacent. The Bahamas is a complacent state. We think, and I say we because I'm in this as well, and I'm part of my responsibility from the private sector side is to raise these awareness issues. We think that everyone else is supposed to do for us. We sit back, we relax, and we say, you come and fix it. You get it done. I am hungry, you come and feed me. I am thirsty, you go get me some water. And I said, no, collectively, and excuse my language, Rev, but get off your backside and do it for yourself. Because it's time for us to move in that direction. So what we determined then was that on the ease of doing business issue in the country, it wasn't that we were doing so poorly, it was that we weren't doing anything. And because we weren't doing anything, other countries like Jamaica, you all remember Jamaica? You all remember these little countries like St. Lucia, right? St. Kitts. Some of these countries, some people in the world probably never even heard about. While we were sitting back waiting for everyone else to do for us, they got on the ground and they started working and working and working, and they were doing for themselves. And now the Bahamas and Jamaica have flipped positions on the Ease of Doing Business Index. Where Jamaica once was is where we are now. And where we were is where Jamaica now is. And that didn't happen by Jamaicans sitting down and saying, wait for them to come and bring the meal to me. They went and they cooked their own food. Literally. Right? Whenever I go to Jamaica, I stay particularly at this hotel in Kingston. And one of the things that they delight in telling us when we have breakfast is that the fruit you're eating was grown in our backyard. The juice you're drinking was just done in our kitchen in the back, and the juice was juiced out of fruits that were grown in the backyard of the Pegasus Hotel in Kingston, Jamaica. When we come here, we go looking for the imported mango. We look for the kiwi and other things. I'm like, man, can I get to a hotel where I can find some juju or some dilly or some mango that came in from Eleuthera, right? Or pineapples that were grown in this country. And this is, again, we have such a dependence on everyone else doing for us that we are failing to do for ourselves. And that is why when I said I was impressed coming in, it was not only with the numbers, but I'm impressed that we actually got to a point to host the Grand Bahama Technology Summit, that coming out of the summit now, it shows that we are now prepared to roll up our sleeves and get some work done for ourselves. So in the area of ICT, there were some recommendations that we made recently. And I just want to run through just a few of them very quickly, and then we're going to talk about some incentives in a second. How much time do I have? 3 minutes, okay. So a couple of recommendations we made. One, and this is some of the stuff we shared with the cabinet recently as well. So one thing is we said there needs to be a dedicated ministry or department of ICT where you have a minister who is responsible for the growth of the ICT sector, not IRCA. IRCA is a regulator. They're not a promoter. By the way, and since I got the government sitting in front of me, I would like to see the government release themselves from a lot of these holdings that they've got. It's a challenge for me when the government sits as the regulator, the licensor, the operator, the customer service representative, and all these other things rolled up into one. I think that it may be more beneficial for us, ministers, if we were to allow the private sector, through partnership with the government, to run some of these industries and run some of these companies and these corporations, and let the government be the ones to crack the whip on us when we're doing wrong. But if the government is in business and the government does something that is untoward, who's going to be the crack the whip on the government? The government. The government will regulate itself. But we need the government to regulate us in the private sector to be sure that we stay on point and that we operate our business ethically and with integrity. Then we'd like to see an internet exchange point established in Freeport. Establish it in Freeport. I think Freeport has the technology, has the infrastructure for that to happen, right? And that means if you were to do that, and I see on the agenda someone is speaking from Google, if you do that, I believe that we will be able to attract some of those large logistics companies, the large technology companies, and some of the other companies that come into the country to actually establish a presence, because now they can get their internet origination and set up their facilities in the Bahamas and not have to rely necessarily on what's happening in the United States or Canada. It's an idea that is worth exploring and that we can, I think, develop. Next, I think we need to establish, as a country, a science, technology, and innovations hub for the region, meaning that we can become the place where everyone else comes to get business done. No matter where you're from. If you're saying we want to go down to the Caribbean to do business, we want to go in Latin America to do business, then Freeport should be the first thing they're talking about, because we have logistics, some of the best logistics, in fact, in the world. We've got location, being so close to the mainland of the United States and to the Americas. We've got infrastructure already in the ground. Why aren't we even on top of this yet? Because of complacency. We should be on the top of the food chain, and this is no joke. Freeport should be so far ahead with what we have already that the Cayman Islands should be coming to us looking for capacity. The United States, when looking to expand the operations from some of these big firms, should be coming to Freeport to say, Freeport, I want to set up there because of what you have already in the ground. Amazon. You all know Amazon. Big e-commerce giant are seeking to move another headquarters, and they've been looking now for the past couple of years as to where they're going to park their next headquarters for their company. They have a plan that in the next 3 to 5 years, they want to establish this new headquarters somewhere in the world. They committed to spend over $50 billion to establish a new presence, employ over 5,000 people. So the question I put was, why did the Bahamas not put itself on the list for consideration? Someone said we did. I didn't hear anything about it, not just now, but I heard this when I mentioned this a week or two ago. That even if we weren't sure if we had a chance, if we didn't even apply or even raised it as a point of interest, then we've already lost that battle. Now, I made this, and I mentioned this to the Deputy Prime Minister, and I'm hoping that he will consider it with his colleagues, that even though they're saying that they have another 3 years or so, I think that they're intending to make up their minds very soon about where they're going to put their next HQ. A part of what we are recommending in this is to establish the Bahamas as a hub for headquarters for international conglomerates. So that when you look at the likes of the Googles and the Amazons and all the other major companies, rather than going down to the Cayman Islands because they have more advantageous tax rules and their ease of doing business is a lot better, and they are welcoming international companies, rather than going down to Bermuda where they're doing the same thing, whether they're going to run over to Singapore or going down to the Seychelles Islands or wherever else they're going, I would like to see the Bahamas position itself to say, we are the international headquarters internationally, right? So that anyone who wants to consider expanding their operations anywhere in the world, that the Bahamas is going to be on top of their consideration to get this done. We want to see smart cities established. Nassau has been identified as a smart city by the International Telecommunications Union and also the CTU. And they're working now towards establishing Nassau as this first smart city in the world. Freeport can have that same advantage. We consider a smart city, right? And a smart city means things like having interconnectivity, Wi-Fi everywhere, broadband everywhere, being able to get online anywhere, anytime, right? Being able to do things with certain apps. And I saw Donovan was on the program earlier. Doing things with certain apps, etc., to be sure that you always have a connection to the world. And that's, this smart cities. It's a reality. It's happening. Nassau is preparing for it. I think that we, Ian, you should make an appeal. Tell them you want to get Freeport next on your list. Yesterday I was dealing with another major issue. I couldn't get you, you know. Almost caught me couldn't come this morning. But I'm sure I'll see a copy. We've talked about this, right? Also, we want to, and again, for the ease of doing business, when we come to ICT, we want to see things like a single window established for business interface with government, implement a plan to expand broadband coverage and fiber connectivities throughout the country, promote blockchain. I saw something on the program of blockchain. Anybody knows about blockchain? Financial technology? Listen, here's the other thing I want to talk about, and this is why the Cayman Islands, I said, are doing so well. Barbados, whose dollar is not even worth a dollar anymore, because the Bahamas are still operating at parity, right? Yes? We still say, or at least think, our dollar is worth a dollar. Barbados' dollar is not worth a dollar in US terms. But Barbados has already jumped out to the front of the curve with the Caribbean, and they are promoting blockchain as their next currency. They are doing it. They're not talking about it. It's being done. Most of the people in this room don't even know what blockchain is. Most of us don't even know what financial technology is. Yesterday. How much y'all know about blockchain? All right. Forgive me for not being here yesterday. But I'm glad, I saw it on the agenda, I'm glad that actually came up in discussion, because that is the future of financial services in the world, not only in this country, right? The governor of the Bank of England is now touting blockchain as the next wave of financial literacy in the UK. Barbados has already implemented it. They are doing it now. The Cayman Islands have already started it. They've implemented it. I don't want to see us come back to this summit next year, if we're going to have it again next year, and have the same discussion again because we have not advanced on our own blockchain technology. And by the way, we might not have a choice, because at the rate the banks are moving in this country, we're going to need some other solution very soon. All right? That's as far as I'll go with that. Before they start calling me, because they're all members of the chamber. We would like to promote the country. When my time is up, please just cue me. Okay. We would like to promote the jurisdiction as a cybersecurity hub as well. See, my friend there, Dr. John Bain, he and I spoke about this recently as well, and we're going to be engaging soon to put together an ICT subcommittee to assist in advising the national committees and the government on some of these ICT initiatives. But cybersecurity has grown to be a significant issue in the country, in the world, in fact, and I think we need to spend some time developing this island, this city, as the cybersecurity hub and attracting those businesses in the country who are able to use that facility here. And I already mentioned the last point, divesting the government of BTC and other companies as a matter of urgent priority. Some of my friends may not like hearing that, but that's my position. Also, I think as to incentivize ourselves and to put measures in place, we ought to now start training ICT curriculum in the high school level. There's a plan that we have in place for that we're going to be releasing and talking about very, very soon. And as I said this before, and I want to reiterate this point, attracting ICT conventions, annual general meetings, corporate retreats, and other type of activities and events into this country, on this island, as a means for us to continue to build up the economy, looking at facilitating a new industry where we can actually generate some significant returns. I can tell you, I know of companies who take their corporate retreats and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a weekend, perhaps millions of dollars on a weekend, giving their corporate executives a wonderful time wherever they go. All expense paid, trips all over the world, spend a lot of money on the ground. This is an area that I think we can promote very easily, and it's something that can be done in very short order. I'll skip over that. Finally, my wrap up. Okay. Let me wrap up by saying this. We talked about the regional headquarters, etc. I just want to say as I close, and I want to thank you so much for your attention this morning. We haven't touched the surface yet. We haven't scratched the surface yet of the true potential that we have as a country. I sincerely believe that. I think that we have so much potential. There are so many opportunities that we have to grow this country, to grow this island, to grow this city as the next big deal in the world. I think that people who are talking about the Bahamas internationally, yes, tell them come to enjoy the vacation. Tell them come to enjoy the sun, sand, and sea. Enjoy the friendly people. Enjoy the wonderful food. Enjoy our beautiful and fantastic culture. But tell them when they come and they bring their smartphones to tell them, yes, you can get online in the Bahamas readily, right? When the businessman comes down, tell them, yes, we are able to keep your power on. Not in Freeport, in another part of the country. Tell them that we have people who we are training, who have skills, who can work in their companies to do the work that you need them to do. So that while we're going to be promoting an immigration policy, yes, while we're going to say, let's relax some of the immigration policies on bringing in expatriate workers, foreign workers, while we're going to set up these specialty vehicles to get people to come in to work and to take up residency and the rest of it, set up companies, hopefully in partnership with other people, say that your need to bring in all these other people may not even exist because we've got the trained people in the Bahamas to do it, right? And that's going to come through training, skills development, productivity. The Bahamas, we now establishing a productivities council that should be, legislation should be put in place very shortly to take to the government for their review. But it has to be a case where we can promote ourselves as the next Mecca and not just be selling sun, sand, and sea. Everybody got sun, sand, and sea. Iceland got sun, sand, and sea. But who going to Iceland on a summer vacation? Few people, right? So I would like to suggest, as I take my seat, thank you very much, Reverend Mark Alpine. I'll give you my clicker so that I know I'm stopping. I want to encourage us, please, let's put together ourselves in a public-private kind of a partnership. I do not expect the government to do this on their own. I do not expect the private sector to do it on their own. But if we can get the level of collaboration between the government, private sector, academia, civil society, and others, there's nothing that we cannot do if we put ourselves together and make this a goal, an objective of our country to become the #1 leader in ICT, innovation, science, technology, etc. over the next 5 years. Because 5 years is like a generation in technology terms. When you leave this room, an app that you didn't have before, when you walk out, it already exists. Several of them. So a year from now is like an eternity. So we don't have any time to waste. Time is not on our side, but I believe we can get this done. Thank you very much. Thank you.